Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel. I wasn't going to make a video today. I was going to have a rest after my live streams on the weekend and before Criterium du Dauphiné started. But Chris Froome put up his power data from stages 2 and 3 from Tour de l'Ain. And there's also been some buzz and speculation going around about whether he actually gets picked by Ineos in their Tour de France roster. So I thought, why not delve into his power data and see if we can find anything interesting. And if you want to check out my Milano Sanremo recap, you can see it on my website, www.lanternerouge.com.au. So Froome didn't put up the first stage of Tour de l'Ain. He only put up stages 2 and 3, which is a shame because I think it would have been interesting to see that first stage, the power he was doing when he couldn't follow the move of Roglic at the end of that stage. But it seems like for the first half of the stage, he was taking it easy. You can see on this sort of undulating climb, average heart rate 124, 280 watts, so definitely not going hard in that section. But then on the Grand Maison Giron climb, I'm not sure if he was in the wheels here. I don't remember him being on the front too much in stage 2, 363 watts for about 20 minutes, 1365 VAM, 6% average gradient. But his heart rate, you know, got to remember Chris Froome's max heart rate is like 160, 165. And then I think it was this last major climb where Froome got dropped. You can see his power at the start of the climb, 431 watts for 5 minutes and 50 seconds. It's saying 6.3 watts per kilo. I don't think it's that high. We'll get to that later in the video when we look at his stage 3 file. But his heart rate, this is a dropout here in the middle, by the way, where it goes from, 143 to 97 back up to 160, 163, which is getting close to his max heart rate. And you can see this is where Froome popped just at the end here, and he drops it back down. You can see the change. It goes from 450, 460 watts, 470 watts, trying to hang on, and then drops it back down to probably below his threshold. But in case you want to know, the VAM when he got dropped was about 1600 on 7.3% average gradient, and it hadn't been too hard a stage up to that point. 300 normalized power, about 3000 kilojoules. So that stage probably not looking great, I guess, getting dropped after 5 minutes to 1600 VAM, going close to maximum heart rate. But it was quite hot, I think, if you look at the average temperature for this ride. 32 degrees average temp, and not much wind. They're not going up to really high altitude or anything where it cools down either at the top of these climbs. But then going on to a stage 3 file where, honestly, all the talk about Froome not getting taken by Ineos to the Tour de France, I think you gotta look at this file or this ride and say, I think he should be taken based on what happened in stage 3 of Tour de l'Ain. That's not to say that he's gonna go and win the Tour de France. I've already spoken at length about that. We don't need to rehash that. But let's look at his power for this stage 3, and you can let me know whether you think that is at least sufficient for him to perform a useful role in the Tour. But just mark down his weight here. It says 69 kilos. That's what all the watts per kilo is being calculated using by Strava Source Chrome extension, free Chrome extension. And once again, it's 32 degrees Celsius and a south-southeasterly about 6 k's an hour, it says on that Chrome extension. But into the data again. Before the first climb of the day, you know, they're doing it pretty easy, 257 normalized for an hour and 45. And then this first climb on Monte de la Selle de Fromentel, I think this is where Froome, and it was said on Twitter because the coverage on GCN Race Pass, I don't think it had started at this point on this first climb of the day. But Ineos were trying to set up Egan Bernal. This stage mirrored a stage from the Tour de France in 2015, I believe, and so there was a not so steep section, and maybe this is when Thomas was on the front, because I understand he was on the front early on. 5.3% average gradient, Froome doing 352 watts for 16, close to 17 minutes. Not that high VAM, but it's not that high average gradient. And yeah, I think pretty sure Froome was sitting on the wheels, or sitting in the wheels here. And then you can see once it gets steep, you can see this watt spike here. I'm pretty sure this is where Froome was on the front, setting pace for Ineos and putting a few riders into difficulty. You can see the average gradient's 11.2%, so it gets much steeper in the second half of this climb. And there's a few reasons why I don't think he did 6.2 watts per kilo. One, a few other riders have said he doesn't look like he's 69 kilos at the moment, visibly, compared to, you know, 69 kilos is his Tour de France race weight, where he's like scary skinny, like terrifying skinny. He might be a couple of kilos heavier than there. He's also got those oval chain rings, which can overread 5%, you know, 3 to 5%. Some of those oval chain rings, I think Froome's might do based on data I've looked at in the past of his. But more importantly, when you look at the VAM, and we're just going to do the Ferrari VAM method, just the quick and dirty one, not the Martin method, which is slightly more accurate. But when you do the VAM divided by the gradient factor, which is 1661 divided by 311.2, then his watts per kilo, that's saying you did 5.34 watts per kilo for this climb, given the VAM of only 1660. I think that 5.34 number might be a bit lower than what it actually is, but I don't think it's 6.2 either, because if it was 6.2 for that duration, the second half of the climb, I would have expected pretty much everyone to get dropped except Bernal, Roglic, and maybe Kruijswijk if he was on a really good day, especially at that heat, over 30 degrees Celsius. So maybe the middle ground's like 5.7 or so watts per kilo that Froome did on that first climb. But nonetheless, still good numbers, and he did a really good job on the front for Ineos there. The next climb, which is the Ful d'Isch, I don't think he was on the front on this climb. It might have been Thomas again. He might have been. I can't remember from the footage. 381 watts. Might be overreading a little bit again. 8.4% average gradient and nearly 1500 VAM. So maybe it's more 5.2, I think. 5.3. Interestingly, no heart rate data. You may have noticed in this third stage 3 file, rather than the stage 2 file did have heart rate data. And then on the Grand Colombier, where he was still there, by the way, Thomas had been dropped, Amador had been dropped pretty early on, I think, on this climb. It was just Castroviejo and Froome. On the Colombier climb, he did a really, really good job based on where he is at the moment. I think he was on the front, setting pace up to here and finished his turn pretty hard. But if you're watching my live stream, and I was doing live stream commentaries at the time, whilst yes, Froome was doing the best job he could here, I could tell he wasn't dropping any more riders really on the Grand Colombier climb when he was pulling his turn. I'm pretty sure he did a lot of damage on this first climb. On the Fromentel climb, I think he did a lot of damage, but on the Colombier climb, yes, he was on the front setting pace, but Jumbo-Visma looked very, very comfortable whilst he was doing so, and it wasn't really putting anyone into difficulty. Nonetheless, 385 watts for 24 minutes, a good job. And if you look at this little weird section here where it goes down and then up again, I think what happened, he finished his turn really strong right here, and then he pulled off, where he's doing 200 watts or so. And then I think Castroviejo, there was some miscommunication, or Bernal was in a funny spot in the bunch. And then Froome went back on the front and did like 387 watts for nearly a minute again, and then he pulled off. But having looked at these 3 climbs and what Froome did, and the temperature as well, and maybe he's got a kilo or so, a couple of kilos that he will lose before the Tour de France, I definitely think he should be in the Tour de France squad for Ineos. I mean, Amador didn't look that good. Tao Gegenhardt, I think, had a crash. Didn't look that good on the third day of Tour de l'Ain either. Froome looked just as strong as Thomas, if not stronger, especially based on this third day. Castroviejo, Sivakov, and Dylan van Baarle will probably be the 3 strongest domestiques. But based on this, can Froome be useful for Ineos in the Tour de France? I think absolutely. Will he win the Tour de France? I don't think so, and the betting markets have drifted out a fair bit on him, although they have come back in today to about 17 if you take the middle of that bid-ask spread there on Betfair. They were out above 25s and 30s for Froome maybe a week ago, but I think having seen his performance at Tour de l'Ain, people might think he can at least contest GC, or it's conceivable that he could win the Tour de France. Whereas today, I just noticed Geraint Thomas, he was down in the 9s, 8s, maybe a week and a half ago. He has really drifted out. This is of today. I saw this move. Not much liquidity here, obviously, but still, there was movement nonetheless. He's gone out to, 18s, 19s on Betfair. So not a lot of faith actually in Geraint Thomas in the markets. Thibaut Pinot's also drifted out, and I think that might also be a function of the strength of Jumbo-Visma and how strong Roglic has looked. Roglic, about a month ago, there was a week period where he was 8-1, and he shortened up very, very sharply. This was on stream last night, by the way. So I opened this up and I was looking at this on stream last night and saying, this is where the odds are about to move. These guys are about to reach parity, and Bernal's about to drift out, and that's what happened. Bernal was just under 2-1 before the Tour de l'Ain started. And the Tour de France, which has been billed as, a Trident against Trident, the market's actually now looking like it's the 2 clear favourites. And then the other GC candidates on Ineos and Jumbo-Visma have really taken a back seat. I actually like Kruijswijk at the moment, but don't worry, we'll do a proper betting preview just before the Tour de France starts. And we've got the Dauphiné starting in a couple of days, so that's going to move the odds again. But let me know in the comments down below whether you think Ineos should take Chris Froome, or whether there's anything to read into these Tour de l'Ain power files that he's put up. There's been a lot of talk on social media about where they're going to take him, and you know, a lot of Bernal putting up Instagram saying Tuodulan was just training, and Froome saying form's incoming, etc. So there's mind games as well. Check out my website for that Milano Sanremo race recap, and follow me on Instagram if you want to get notified about my live streams and things like that. We're nearly at 10k, and once we hit 10k on Instagram, I'll stop plugging it, because then I can do the swipe up thing. So follow me on Instagram at the Lanterne Rouge. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and you're well. Ciao.